In 2022, I came across a marvelous, marvelous movie called Curse of Crom, The Legend of Halloween. It's a story about a group of high school friends who accidentally unleash an ancient Irish entity that must be stopped before midnight on Halloween night. It's the perfect balance of laughs and scares, and honestly, one of my favorite movies of all time. So when I heard that the Curse of Crom team was doing a Kickstarter for a sequel, I was over the moon with excitement. I had the amazing opportunity to sit down and talk with Rob York, the co writer and director of Curse of Crom, and talk about the Kickstarter campaign and the return of this legendary nightmare.
Hi, I'm Rob York, writer and director of Curse of Crom 1, and now working on the sequel, Curse of Crom 2, Crom's Fury. I think I think a lot of the Halloween entities that we think of are kind of made up, like they're relatively recent uh, additions to the Halloween lore. I mean, obviously, you go back and you got like your classic headless horseman and that kind of thing from Washington Irving and earlier stories. But it's more like, it's more like you have witches and you have these kind of things. But as far as like an actual like figure in Halloween lore, there's not that many that are actually part of the real lore, I would say. And so and this is going back to the first Crom, when we were coming up with the story, I had in mind, okay, I want to do a Halloween movie, like something that revolves around the holiday, and I want to delve into Halloween lore and like all the different traditions that we have in Halloween, like trick or treating, wearing costumes, like all that kind of stuff, but dive into like the original origins of it. And a lot of that is from like Irish history and traditions and stuff that's kind of obviously Samhain and kind of been brought over to America via the Irish, and a lot of those traditions just kind of, melded well with the American culture there and just kind of took over, and it became a crazy uh, crazy consumerist thing that it is now today. um, but in doing that, as we were breaking down the story, we needed a central antagonist for the story. Like we had all these little details that we could fit together, but it was like we needed something from Irish lore that could kind of tie it all together. And so we were looking up, ancient Irish deities and monsters and legends and stuff. And we found Crom Cruach, who was perfect because he's one of the oldest deities that there is. But it was just a fun, here's an ancient Irish being that we can incorporate into the story that can, have some little basis in historical and dramatic truth, as it were. Well, I mean, the stereotypical thing to say would be like, oh, well, the first one made a lot of money, so let's make a sequel. There's a little bit of that in there. It was successful, so that kind of made us think, okay, we can actually do a sequel. But even before we knew whether or not the film would do well, I kind of had these just little snippets of ideas running through my mind of things that would be cool to have in a sequel. And so as we're kind of going through all this, I was like it would be super cool to do a sequel, but I don't want to just do like the same movie again and like, oh, make it scarier or whatever. It had to exist for a reason. And that's kind of where we landed on this idea of doing a buddy comedy where we partner Mary's dad with Harvey, who he doesn't like, in an effort to they have to team up basically. And obviously Mary's dad is not happy about it, but he knows he has to team up with this person. So there's going to be a lot of fun back and forth with kind of the Mary's dad, Greg, being the straight man, and then Harvey being kind of the loony guy who's just like crazy. And there's just this the collision of opposite personalities will make for a lot of fun moments. As we were filming the first one and kind of getting to know the different characters, because there's what we write in the script, and then there's what the actors bring to the script. And Tanner Gilman as Harvey, like he literally turned the film from a kind of straightforward like Halloween spook fest for, for kids, as it were, or whatever. But he turned it into a comedy because of the way that he delivered his lines, and he improved a lot of things. And it was like, okay, this is great. We're gonna lean into this.
I think it's funny that you mention it originally starting off as a more horror-centered movie, and then slowly, because of the cast, turning more into a funnier thing.
Hmm.
I actually find that happens a lot with sequels. I don't mind it at all. I think it works perfectly. A lot of people say that horror and comedy are pretty much two sides of the same coin. It's all about
Oh,
timing. And
it's
I
timing and
totally
music.
agree. Oh yes, yes, for sure. Tell me more about the cast. I know there's some returning faces, and one of my favorite characters is said to come back, Eleanor the cat. Tell me, tell me more about the cast
Yeah.
and Eleanor.
So I mean, we had to, and this is slightly spoiler territory, but I mean, you can see in our Kickstarter video that we're revealing that Eleanor's back. But we had to, why is Crom back? We had to come up with the reason, and we figured that the most ridiculous reason we could come up with is because Stephanie is still angry that they took her cat, and so she goes and unburies it and takes it home, which of course, ruins the whole um what would you call it? Ruins the ending of the first movie, and Crom is now free to go out. Kind of the way that we decided to take it was in the first one, it was just kind of a throwaway joke, like, oh yeah, she's like obsessed with this cat, and so it's gonna be really sad when she finds out that they stole it. But we decided so working with Monica as Stephanie was really eye-opening. It was really fun because the character was written as a very like just kind of ditzy throwaway character, like there to serve the plot. But Monica brought a lot of humanity to Stephanie's character. And by the end of it, like I feel really bad for Stephanie. Like it was like, oh man, I actually feel bad for this girl. Like this is like she didn't want any part of this, and now it's like a really terrible situation that she's been dragged into. The way that we decided to take the Stephanie and Eleanor relationship in the sequel is to make it kind of like a a bad boyfriend relationship that she can't break up with this poor cat. And she's obsessed with it, and she doesn't want to let it out of its sight, which is, I mean, obviously if you've seen the first movie, the cat is dead. um so so we're playing with that a little bit. I would say the sequel is much like if you were to say um the first movie is kind of like Evil Dead, which it's not. Don't it is much more tame than that. It's a family movie. It's fun for kids and grown-ups who grew up with those kind of movies in the 80s. Um, but if the first one is Evil Dead, the second one is going to be more Evil Dead 2, where we just take things a little bit over the top and just make it ridiculous and fun. So it's a lot more of what people really loved about the first movie, and just a lot more mayhem and craziness. Um, if you watch the first movie, I mean, it's the ending is pretty final. Like I mean, you see Crom disintegrate into skeletal nothing and slime and gooiness. And so it's like, okay, so if we're going to bring him back, how do we, if we're going to try to finish him off for good, what are we going to do? Like, can you do that, after the first one? In order, in order to beat the the finale of the first movie, I kind of just thought, the only thing we can do is go to Ireland. Like we have to take it home to where the whole curse came from originally. But we wanted to kind of take the whole thing back to the original legend that's in the first movie. And we have some awesome locations that we're hoping to film at, including a sweet old, and you can catch a glimpse of it in the Kickstarter video, but it's a cool wedge tomb, that'll be kind of like an actual tomb and not like a homemade one like in the first movie. I mean, so Prom was really kind of my love letter to the movies I grew up with, like when I was a little kid, like Ernest Scared Stupid, Gremlins, like all that kind of awesome 80s ridiculousness. And so I kind of wanted to capture that feel, but not have it be bound to like everything has to be an 80s throwback. But what was unnegotiable was the practical effects. I mean, especially on a smaller budget film, like you can't get good digital effects. Like it just wouldn't, they would be awful, just awful. Um, and frankly, in really expensive films, a lot of times they're really awful. And it's like you have two ways of looking at it. Either it can be crappy digital effects that pull you out of the movie, or crappy practical effects that may be a little cheesy and you could say aren't realistic, but they're still there and they're a presence in the movie that the actors are interacting with. Like that just feels so much better to me. Like it's so much more fun and visceral, and you can do all sorts of crazy things with it. And then obviously, you can do amazing, 100% realistic, like awesome practical effects. Um, and we kind of fit somewhere in the middle there. We have an awesome visual effects artist named Chris Hansen. He's just local to where we are. He used to work out in Burbank, but is now located in Salt Lake City and runs his own little VFX company. They do a lot of stuff for haunted houses and things. But anytime he gets to work on a movie, like he did some stuff, like some minor stuff with Hereditary. He did some stuff with Snatchers. He did like just a lot of like little fun projects that happened to film in Utah. Well, I guess,
Little fun projects,
yeah, like
little ones like
Hereditary.
Hereditary.
Anyway, so I approached him. I was like, "Hey, we want to do a monster movie," and he's like, "Okay, cool. I like where you're going with this because anytime you hear the word monster, he gets excited." I'm like, "So here's kind of what we're thinking," and I pitched the idea to him, and he got super pumped about it. And we didn't have any specific idea of how we wanted the creature to look. It was like, okay, it's a hooded figure, that's an old kind of ghostly entity that has powers. And his idea was like, well, I don't want to just do like a Dementor from Harry Potter. Like that's kind of the typical thing you would imagine with this. Like I want it to be like more like Ghostbusters, kind of a monster or whatever. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. So we did our he created our little creature, which is awesome. We had three versions of it that we used in the film. We had like a dummy head, and then we had like a remote controlled head that you could operate the mouth and the eyes on, that the actor could wear. And then we also had like a fully functioning cable controlled just the head for like hero shots. So you could like its mouth open, its lips moved, like its cheeks removed, all this crazy stuff. So we used that for like the close-ups. And it was just so much fun to work with because I was sitting there. We have the scene where Crom haunts Georgia, and she has her like ramen noodles with her or whatever. We were working on the actor like bends over, growls under the bed or whatever, and I'm sitting there, behind the monitor operating the remote control, just like, but I can't stop myself. I'm like, rah, rah, like the whole time, like I have to make sound effects, and it was like the best experience of my life. Like, it was so fun. In kind of developing the story, we also we also had like kind of small little puppets that we used for kind of the end scenes. Anytime Crom was flying or whatever, and they were really fun to work with too because you had like two little hands on sticks and like a little lever that made the mouth open and close. And I got to thinking like it would be fun to shoot with like a movie with like a bunch of little Croms, like running like little Cromlings running around or
I
something.
love that.
Um, and so that anyways that sort of developed as we were coming up with the sequel, and it's no longer literally cromlings, but it is another creature from Irish lore, that is now kind of his minion, I guess. So there's hundreds of these little creatures that we're not going to make 100 of them, but there's like 100 of them in the movie. But yeah, I'm excited. There's going to be lots of these little guys running around, and they're going to be fighting them, and lots of exploding slime heads and things like that. So it should be fun and really slimy and icky and gooey and gross. So there is no plan B. If the Kickstarter is not successful, the movie probably just won't happen. Part of that is because I don't know how much longer we can use our same actors. And granted, they're in college now in the sequel. They're no longer in high school, so we're buying ourselves a little bit of time there, but they are getting older. Oh, assuming it is successful, basically the timeline is that we jump into pre-production immediately, like which is kind of what I'm already doing right now. Like that's why I'm having Chris start sculpting and stuff because I don't want to, have it be successful and then suddenly we're behind the gun a little bit. So the idea is we will start official pre-production the day after it's successful. Um, and then we will film the last week of October through the first week of November as our primary shoot dates. And then after that, currently the schedule is after that, we'll go to Ireland for 5 days. And then from there, the movie needs to be done by May, is kind of what we're looking at. Because in order to line it up for a fall release, we have to have the movie done so they can deliver it to the whoever distributes it can deliver it to the streaming services and all that sort of thing. And then the idea with the Kickstarter is that we'll get everybody their Kickstarter rewards in August, so everybody that backs the Kickstarter can watch it before anybody else, and then in September it'll be released on streaming platforms.
All right. Last question. This is a surprise question.
Okay, ready for this.
Will the Curse of Crom ever truly end?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, you can't stop Crom. There's there's no way. There's no way. He's been around before human beings, so there's no way we're gonna be able to put an end to him.
That's what I
Well,
like to hear.
we'll be on like, Crom 57 by the time we're done with this. No, but so there is actually a Crom 3 that's has been being written. I'm actually meeting with Tanner Gilman. He actually wrote the script himself. So it's more of a Harvey spinoff is what it is. Um, but I'm interested to see what he put it. He pitched it to me briefly, and I was like, that would actually work perfectly with the ending of Crom 2. So we got to get the sequel made before we move on to that stuff. But so yeah, so the Kickstarter runs through September 28th. And again, it's make it or break it. Like we have to make this Kickstarter work to be able to film the movie, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think a lot of people are going to love it. It'll be, especially if you're a fan of the first movie, I think you will love the sequel. It's honestly the script is better, the action is going to be better, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. So back it if you can. Really appreciate it, mean a lot, and we will get an awesome movie in your hands, and you can get exclusive rewards that you won't be able to get anywhere else. There will be no physical media except through the Kickstarter because distributors don't do physical media hardly anymore. So if you want a DVD, if you're a collector, DVD, VHS, Blu-ray, we've got all those and other things that we're filming with, including puppets that will be used in the movie. So you can get your hands on one of those. But appreciate it. Please back.
Like Rob said, check out the Curse of Crom 2, Crom's Fury Kickstarter campaign, and pledge some money to this really, really awesome project where the whole team just has all of the Halloween spirit you could ever imagine. The campaign runs until the end of September, so don't wait too long. I'll leave a link in the description, so check that out. A big thank you to Rob York for sitting down to talk to me about the campaign, and the best of luck to the Crom cast and crew. I hope to see Crom on my TV again soon.